It's a solid, normal-sized phone at a really good price, but is that enough these days? Hey there, this episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by viewers like you. All of the incredible people sharing content across social media and the generosity of my patrons at patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. More info on those awesome nerds later in the video. Alright, I've been spending a little time with the iQOO 15R. I'm a huge fan of Vivo, and I like what iQOO brings to the table. Often, it's more of a conversation about performance, where Vivo typically leans a bit more into cameras. Very consistent trends between those two labels. I don't want to get stuck just sort of regurgitating the things that we always know, but I have been a little torn on where to classify the 15R. These R and T and mid-pack kinds of phones are getting a bit more difficult for me to categorize in place, kind of blurring the lines, and lots of crossover at the upper edge of mid-ranger phones, the lower end of premium tier, lazy words to describe flagships and flagship killers. And at the end of all that explaining and describing, we still just have a phone here in our hands. Who is the right fit for a device like this? iQOO seems to be looking at a market where we want a good, normal-sized phone. This isn't a mini phone, this isn't a super huge ultra, but we're leaning a little harder into the lifestyle technologies, battery life, charging, with really good performance, but not at the top tier of what both chip manufacturers can deliver these days. That's the claim from this company, and after spending some time, we're going to talk about whether or not those claims have been realized. So first of all, just starting off with design, this is par for the course. For the last 2 years, we've just been seeing phone after phone after phone that arrive with the same sort of flat side, flat back, flat glass, rounded corner, square or a rectangle for the camera assembly in a very iPhone-y style fashion. This is the least expensive way to make a nice phone, and all the companies have kind of jumped on the Apple bandwagon for this style of presentation. Wherever we can hold on to some aesthetic differences, like I like how Oppo is trying to do these like oval style cutouts, right? You've got the camera module, but then these sort of inserts into the camera module that gives the OnePlus 15R a slightly different look, where instead iQOO has always been about the squircle. Look, you can totally tell the difference between this phone and any other manufacturer because this phone has a squircle on the back. When viewed at a distance, this totally won't look like some kind of funky case on an iPhone because from meters away, you can totally tell that it's a squircle. I gotta poke fun, but the reality of this phone is that it really does seem that Vivo and iQOO, they're sharing all of the parts bins so that they can more easily iterate on different devices. I think this is exceedingly similar to something like the Vivo V70 that I just recently reviewed on this channel. We can stamp out numerous parts between these two phones to make it really easy to mass produce different devices to hit different demographics, different price points. So much so that the cases are nearly identical. They're almost interchangeable. Like you can tell the little LED strip here, there's a little hole for it there. You can see the camera module is a bit bigger on one side, but the only reason I can't swap these cases is because of the slight difference in placement for the volume rocker and power button. Otherwise, the build is close enough that these cases would be interchangeable. Walking around the frame, there really aren't any surprises here. This is a very familiar form factor, very familiar aesthetic. Two cameras on the back, very iPhone in this price tier kind of solution, though it still does have an IR blaster to use this as a universal remote, and the speakers are sounding pretty good. A lot of talk has been made about improving the screen. So we've been moving beyond 120 hertz to 144 hertz. There are a few phones out there with 165 hertz refresh rate displays. It's difficult to quantify what the improvement is. All of these devices have been nicely fluid, performant. Everything kind of moves and scans and slides. I think that comes down more to the software and the animation engine than the literal refresh rate of the screen. I think we've got diminishing returns. But what I am happy to see, because I've never been the biggest fan of in-display fingerprint sensors, is that a lot of these companies now pushing to lower price points having adopted ultrasonic fingerprint sensors. But here we've got a pretty good target zone, and it's a snappy and quick unlock, fast verification. For the refresh rate and the slightly brighter display, however we're measuring nits on a screen, this is a good outdoor viewable screen. I think the biggest upgrade has been that fingerprint sensor unlock. Bringing us to the software on this device, and I still got to comment, it's been nice. finally properly retiring FunTouch. Even phones that are a year or two old now have all been moving on to Origin. The layout, the animation, the bouncy, the customization options where you can get into crafting wallpapers with sort of layered and depth effects. It's been a nicer overall experience, fast and fluid. We still have all of those nice little additions if you want side docks, and side docks that now have transparency and fade effects. Really responsive in how we scroll through multitasking and all of the options for gestures. So we have a clear little caret indicator for all the things that we can do, or when we're in an app, we have better support for gestures to directly take us to things like floating window or split screen multitasking. I gotta praise Oppo for doing some of that work first, but it's been really nice to see all the other Android manufacturers picking up on that. Origin has been a beautiful system to move over to. OriginOS, just really great, and I especially love, we're keeping this vertical column of quick toggles for all the little settings that you might want to manage on a vertical column for all of our notifications. I hate the lateral swipes that are all copying the iPhone. I don't like it if I swipe from one side of the screen, I get something different from the other, and there are different actions for vertical and horizontal, especially when a part of our horizontal action is literally the back button. It's just been a great overall experience getting to play with Origin. Like I said, I feel like the improvements here, the polish, the animation, that's what's really contributing to making this device feel smoother than the extra 20 frames per second after 120 FPS. Now I'm reviewing the unit with 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage. This is running the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 non-elite. This is a punchy performer. We're moving Orion cores into more of the experiences where this is sort of the lower premium tier option. I'll be curious to see if Qualcomm does an 8S variant anytime in the future. I feel like their spread of 8 series and 7 series chips was always a little confusing. I'm just looking at benchmarks that don't really tell you a whole lot. These are big numbers that are smaller big numbers than what we would have with the 8 Elite, but if we believe that this is any indication or is able to predict real world performance, then yeah, we're closing in on older laptop grade scores here. The compute power is compute power. It doesn't matter what shape your computer is. We should be able to lean on our pocket computers to do more of the work that we would have used our regular full-sized computers. Of course, I love to test things like video editing. That's my transcoding test. Let me get back into just my basic rendering test. After Qualcomm moved to Orion core and a sort of variant on a bigger core, all big core design, I've noticed that one of the things that's really improved is how the Qualcomm chips handle multimedia. Now, I already have a full write-up on all of the benchmark and testing that I do, video editing and rendering, transcoding, file compression, batch photo processing. I do an audio podcast mixdown. And you can catch all of those scores and benchmarks over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. But if I just fire this up right here, and I just want to render this at a pretty decent bit rate, just nice high quality 4K video, this is a 1-minute clip, something that would be very similar if you wanted to edit and render and upload a short. And I just push render on this now. This is one of the biggest improvements that we've seen to Qualcomm tech, where MediaTek was blowing Qualcomm away, and MediaTek still wins in these kinds of showdowns on LumaFusion and on CapCut. I don't have to do much talking. It's a 1-minute 4K video at a pretty high bit rate, and this phone is able to chew it up really fast. Those scores aren't much behind what we would have if this phone was using the 8 Elite version of this chip. And of course, our performance platitudes extend into gaming. This is a very solid setup, though obviously GPU performance is one of the things that separates the 8 Elite from the 8 Gen 5. But again, if you believe those benchmark scores, what we're looking at here is performance that should rival 5000 series AMD chips, maybe 11th or 12th gen integrated graphics on Intel laptops, plenty of horsepower to do something really fun like play the recent port of Tomb Raider 2013, or also with those Adreno GPUs and the good driver support that we have for Adreno, you can also get in there and do some really fun emulation. It's one of those things, I'm not really quite sure how hard I should grade the iQOO 15R, because iQOO often presents as a higher performance option, either flagship killer or just outright gaming performance flagship kind of device. The 15R I don't believe is making that same kind of claim, but that's what the label has been known for in the past. But this is where it's always kind of difficult. Like if you recommend this year's sort of lower end iQOO R, or you could maybe get a good deal on last year's higher performance iQOO, I'm really gilding this lily. I'm not trying to make it sound like this isn't a great performing. This is a great performing phone. It just lives in an ecosystem of other similarly great performing phones. It's punchy, it's quick, it's powerful. I feel like in general, where iQOO has often scaled back some, like I don't even want to call them compromises, but just sort of cost adjustments is in camera performance. The cameras on tap are fine. This feels very iPhone-y in what its capabilities might be. You've got one wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide camera. Thankfully, we don't sacrifice things like 4K video at 60 frames per second. And we've got a pretty decent collection of little camera modes and settings that feel very adjacent to what you can get on a Vivo, even down into a solid Pro mode that still includes video options, which not all of our flagship killer phones might include because they're saying, well, you're looking at performance, you're not looking at content creation. We're not asked for very many compromises there. The Vivo camera app in general is put to really good use, including a dedicated night mode, something that I wish Xiaomi would bring back. We've got solid portrait capabilities, the software bokeh blur. I mean, this kind of stuff is fun to play with. I like that it seems like it's trying to figure out depth and distance. That's really cute. It's not a bad look. I'm a camera snob, I'm a camera purist. I don't really use a lot of these features, but playing with this phone, at least it's making those efforts. You're definitely gonna feel these camera sensors if you're trying to push your phone into more challenging lighting conditions or into darker situations. This obviously doesn't have Zeiss branding on it like Vivo's do, but I like that there's still enough of the Vivo DNA here that your camera isn't gonna be relegated to that place of, well, I guess if you have nothing else and the only garbage you have with you is your phone. The cameras do a lot better than that. But I wouldn't turn to the 15R if like a main part of what I wanted to do on my phone was to shoot short videos, reels, or really try and capture family memories with a bit more aesthetic. And that's gonna bring us to the battery and the charging, where this thing is an absolute beast. 7,600 milliamp hour battery. I have not spent a lot of time with my SIM card in this phone. I popped it in for just a little bit to make sure I could get network connection. I did get a 5G icon when I popped it in. Battery life has just been absolutely stunning as I've been running all of my tests. And of course, this is one of those chips where you will see a difference if you try to kick this up into the monster mode. You can eke out a little bit more horsepower there. And just continuing to embarrass the companies that we get here in North America, Samsung, Google, and Apple, where not only does this phone support actual fast charging, it supports up to 100-watt fast charging, but of course it came with the pre-applied screen protector. It came with a bumper case just to kind of get you started. And the box isn't like full-on chunky box, but still inside the box, I don't know why I didn't pull this out before I started shooting the video, that 100-watt fast charger is included in the price of the phone. So anytime someone's comparing against like a Galaxy S26, like I think it's fair to put this phone up against a Galaxy S26 Plus, and this phone absolutely embarrasses most of the lifestyle performance, battery life, longevity, and the ability to charge really quickly. That's tech that Google, Apple, and Samsung just aren't playing with, and this is a phone that significantly undercuts the value proposition of a Galaxy S26. You could spend twice as much on an Ultra and still charge a smaller battery slower than what you can do on the iQOO. So I want to start wrapping this up, and I've got to put out that question, or I got to put out that comment again. I'm always a little torn when we get really deep into the R series, the reduced series phones. iQOOs have a reputation for performance, so what can we do with the 15R? And even knowing, I'm not trying to say this should be a higher performance phone at the same price. I'm not trying to do that dumb thing where techies and reviewers say, oh, it would have been better if it were faster and more powerful and less expensive, because that's not useful commentary. But a chip like this is still ridiculous overkill compute power for the vast majority of average consumer daily driver needs. But I feel like we've hit this kind of weird plateau. It's harder and harder to get the compute power out of the phone and into other applications that might help consumers, might make more sense. Crazy high speed, high spec performance, and the USB is still a USB 2. It's gonna take longer for me to load files on the phone, take files off the phone, and I can't use this phone to do really fun boutique things like plug in some fancy cinema glasses. If you travel a lot, if you're flying a lot, I would highly recommend picking up a pair of something like this. These are my Neos. You can plug them into your phone, and any movies you have stored on your phone, you can watch on fancy glasses that give you this giant, massive projected movie screen out in the air in front of you. Unless you shop in this Flagship killer space, and then you can't get video output through this port. We're long past time where even entry-level phones should have the ability to plug into another monitor, and here we're still dealing with phones that are decently expensive. This is creeping up into that premium tier, and we still can't get a feature like video output. We keep sprucing up, we keep improving these little 10% here, 20% there performance improvements, incredible battery life, super fast charging. The daily lifestyle tech here is spot on, but it does feel like we're kind of recycling an overall philosophy or an overall experience that we've been floating in for the last couple years, at least since the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. I'm not trying to tag iQOO. I don't think this is unique to iQOO. A lot of these same criticisms would be leveled against a phone like the OnePlus 15R. These two phones are exceedingly similar in how I would criticize them. But it is also just kind of interesting how granular and how separated just a few different component choices make these conversations, where I think iQOO's toughest competition is actually against their own parent company. I've been holding up this phone. This is the Vivo V70, and this is not the Vivo V70 Pro Max Element OP. This is just the regular V70. And I think this is actually a more brutal fight for the iQOO than any external phone might be. Yes, you would sacrifice some performance, you would step down to a Snapdragon 7 Gen 4, but you would step up to a trio of cameras and a more complete camera app with that Zeiss branding. So when we're weighing those pros and cons, like what do consumers really care about, that yeah, you've got a huge battery here and it's slightly bigger than the battery in this phone, but this phone has a more power efficient chip. You might actually be able to get better runtime for the daily driver stuff. This conversation gets so tough because those little granular differences and nuances are so hard to get across in a video where I'm just manhandling two different phones on camera. I like a lot of what iQOO is doing here. This overall package and bargain, even though it's not radically different, that it's just a little bit smaller than the OnePlus 15R, makes this a great option in the lineup. And like I've been pointing to, does serious competition, does some real damage against Samsung when you step below that Ultra tier. Imagining this up against an A-series Samsung that might not cost much less. Putting a hurt on an iPhone 17 when this is really coming in at like a 17E kind of price. So the mission of an iQOO is still alive and well, where in many regions this is going to be a really good value for the performance. But I still have to ask, and kind of how I started this whole video, what is it that you expect, or what is it that you want out of an R series phone? We're also starting to iterate and plateau in this space, and even less expensive mid-rangers are starting to creep in on this territory too. So I would love to hear some chatter. How do you feel about the iQOO 15R and other R series or flagship killer series phones from similar manufacturers, from Oppo, from Xiaomi? Drop those tasty hot takes down in the comments below. I love digging into this stuff. And the folks who get to see the results of my testing and benchmarking first are of course my incredible patrons, all of the folks over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. I already have my performance charts out where I compare this phone against the OnePlus 15R and mix in a few mid-rangers just so you can see there's a spread, a $700 spread on the phones on my performance charts against this phone here. And I don't think we see $700 worth of performance differences. So you can catch all of those nerdy bar graphs over on the Patreon. A huge thank you from the bottom of my heart, as these are the folks that are helping to support and are contributing to keeping the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. They get early access to my videos and reviews, production diaries, behind the scenes, editorials, the private chat. They're basically the coolest tech pals in the universe. So I hope you'll check them out. I hope you'll consider joining the community at patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere, but these days I'm trying to spend a bit more time on the Mastodons, a lot less so on the Facebooks, Threads, Instagrams, and practically none at all on that dumpster fire site. And I will catch you all on the next review.